Back so quick. Yes, sir. Whitney Wiseman here again, Norp's Executive Director. Just wanted to touch base. This is my personal opinion and perspective on overhead and profit. I've talked a lot, made a lot of videos about this in the past. I think this is something that is completely misunderstood, misinterpreted in the industry, and personally I think it's made into something that way more than it needs to be. With that being said, let me just cover real quick the definitions of overhead and profit. So I'm going to take the definition of overhead straight from investinganswers.com. Overhead refers to the ongoing operating expense necessary to running a business, but are not attributed to specific business activities, also referred to as indirect costs. And how this works, according to this website, generally overhead expenses include expenses that do not directly generate revenues, such as labor and materials, but are needed to maintain the business operations, such as overhead expenses including accounting, advertising, depreciation, insurance, interest, legal, rent, repairs, office supplies, taxes, and information and communication, utilities, research and development, customer relations, and service, as well as travel. These overhead expenses are listed in the company's income statement. Why this matters. Overhead costs are considered fixed costs. That is, they do not rise or fall directly with the cost of goods sold. It's an important one. Overhead costs are important to monitor and control since they are not directly related to revenues. They can become a larger share of the total expense and burden of a company, soaking up the net income and profits. So, I know, that's a definition. Once again, I'm going to source investinganswers.com. And then we'll jump over to profit, which I went to dictionary.com to get that one. I know, very, very high tech. I'm going online for this stuff, guys. Noun, profits. Pecuniary gains resulting from the employment of capital in any transaction. The ratio of such pecuniary gain to the amount of capital invested. Returns, proceeds, or revenue as from property or investments. So you're making profits. Anyways, guys, the point is that no one's going to sit here and argue that you don't deserve and you don't need to make money to cover your overhead expenses in business. No one would ever think that it would be fair to ask you not to make a profit. You need to make sure your overhead is covered. You need to make sure that you're making a profit. You need to make sure that you understand what your costs are individually as business. I think it's very general to sit here and say that a 10 and a 10 or a 15 and a 20 or a 10 and a 20 or whatever the way you want to put it is a standardized way of billing for overhead and profit, when everybody's overhead and profit is completely different from each other, and everybody calculates this differently. Every state has different payroll taxes. Every state and every area has different rental and costs for doing business. Insurances are different in every state. Cost for vehicle insurance is different for every state. Labor costs are different in every state. Equipment costs and transportation and shipping are different in every single state. If you're farther away from a distributor than the guy next to you, your cost to get that same piece of equipment costs you more. Your expense for your overhead is more at that point in time for your shipping and you're getting your materials to you. So with that being said, when you're in business, it is very important to make sure that your overhead is covered and worked into all of your line item billables that you put into a invoice. It is also very important to make sure that you're working with a good accountant as well as a business manager possibly, I should say. Or you just work with somebody who has an understanding for the finances and the importance of making sure that your business profits and that you're a profitable entity. If you're not a profitable entity, then you're going to end up paying the man over and over and over again, and you're going to end up out of business before you know it. Business is not easy, and you need to make sure you calculate all these things properly. And going off of a general number that is thrown out there based off of some standardized industry acceptable means of what's overhead and profit, to me, I think that that's irresponsible and lazy. Excuse me for saying this, but I think that everybody needs to take the time that's necessary in order to analyze their business properly in order to figure out what it is your true overhead is for you. Every single person in all of our groups, it doesn't matter what group you're a part of, your overhead is different than the guy next to you. Period. Your rent's going to change that, your vehicle expenses are going to change that, and your insurance is going to change that. There's no way that there are two people, other than just straight luck, that have the exact same overhead costs as another guy somewhere else in the country. And if you do, it's just luck, like I just said. So you have to make sure that you're monitoring your costs of doing business, and you make sure that you equate the amount of money that you spend and turn it into a breakdown of your true cost, which is your overhead. You need to cover these costs when doing business. Using a price list like Xactimate is a whole nother thing. I could go into a whole nother tangent about Xactimate and Xactimate billing. I'm probably going to do a whole nother video specifically on Xactimate billing and my opinion on it. I use Xactimate for a billing tool, but at the same time, I use my own line items and my own prices that I get approved by my customers on a job-by-job case, which we don't change our prices, but every job, they are approved. And that's how we bill. We use it as a standardized format in order to make sure that our bills are put together in a way that the insurance company can understand it and read it, as well as making sure that when we're doing decontamination charges for our equipment, or we're doing some of the secondary items that aren't necessarily worked into your labor that's associated to direct billable charges on a job, secondary accounting purposes, if you will, but we can go into that later. Like I said, not get off track here. We'll get back to overhead and profit. Profit, we just kind of touched on overhead very heavily. Profit, you're in business to make a profit. And if you're not in business to make a profit, then you're probably a charity. And even 95% of the charities that I've done research on are all in business to do one thing, and that's to make a profit. Whether they're putting that profit towards something else, that's not for me to say or not. But at the end of the day, most every business and charity at that point in time is trying to make a profit. And there's nothing wrong with that. You as a business owner have to be able to put food on your table. You need to be able to make sure that you can grow your business, that you can take your business to the next level, that you can reinvest in yourself, that you can reinvest into marketing, you can reinvest into your website, into employment opportunities, into staffing, into training. All these things that aren't necessarily being taken advantage of as much as they need to in our industry. One big thing is people are spending tons of money in advertising, but they're not spending any money in training their technicians. That's one big flaw I think going into next year needs to be changed. But back to profits. You have to make a profit to be in business. If you don't make a profit to be in business, then I don't know what the hell you're doing. Just stop doing it. You need to make a profit. So with that being said, overhead and profit are both viable items that you need to make sure are on every single invoice. But where we're going to differ and where I'm going to change the way I do things versus a lot of the things that I hear on a lot of these other groups. If you want to pound your chest, put something on the table to, pretend like it may be bigger than somebody else's or whatever the case you want to be, just to prove a point. I love it. Good for you. But personally, I'm about taking care of my customers. I'm about making sure that they get through the process in an easiest process necessary, to be repetitive there at all. But the goal is to make sure that when they're done and when I'm done with the job, that they have everything that they need to move forward with the insurance company, and they're not going to have to fight the fight that you and us deal with all the time. My overhead and my profit is worked into my pricing. I don't put a line item of overhead and profit into the bottom to last page of my bill. Every single thing I charge for, whether it's my labor, whether it's equipment rental, whether it's trucks being used on the job site, all those expenses are taken into account and are billed for accordingly. I bill for every hour that my employees are working on or for a job. I bill for every piece of material or equipment that is on a job for however long it is on a job for. And I bill for anything else that is associated to that job that is applicable based off of the type of category or size of loss that it is. I don't necessarily feel that I need to put two line items at the end of a bill that say, here's this 10% extra that you're paying me, here's this 10% extra that you're paying me. And I also know that there are a lot of people that are marking up their line items and making their overhead and profit in their line items while at the same time throwing in a secondary overhead and profit at the end of the bill to try to work it up and make more money. That's fraudulent, and if you're doing that, shame on you. I hope you're not. But in the meantime, if you're doing your bills properly, charging for what you do on a job, and making sure that you don't overcharge and that you don't miss any documentation needed in order to back up any of the work that you've done on a project, you'll be golden. You can be so simple, and this goes back to some of the billing that I do, but you can put things in a much simpler fashion and do a time and materials billing, if you will, with a couple other line items that you could put in there from Xactimate that are your Xactimate prices that don't basically overlap each other or double bill. And you can make sure that you cover yourself for absolutely everything. And you have less to argue about. I talk to a couple people about this all the time: square foot, linear foot, and cubic foot charges. Just giving somebody an opportunity to argue with you about what you're charging because they heard or saw somebody do it for less per linear foot. And you're talking pennies usually, pennies, nickels, or quarters. Rarely are you talking about dollars. And this needs to change. The mindset that we need to negotiate with people based off of the fact that we're talking about items. It's like we're trying to sell people a car. I'm not a car dealer. I'm not a car salesman. I'm a professional, and I spent a lot of money getting trained, and I spent a lot of time working with my mentors and individuals to get on the level where I've gotten. And at that point in time, I still think I have a long way to go to become the best of the best. But with that being said, you really, really, really need to make sure that you're putting these things into your billing. And how you do it, I personally don't care. But I see a lot of people getting kickback and getting feedback from individuals because they're not using whatever it is. They're telling you you're not using the right amount of subcontractors. Whether or not that is true and that is the case, I'm not going to fight that. I just know that it's easier to get paid 100% of the money that is owed to me by me not trying to put my proverbial what on the table and try to say, you're paying me for every penny just because these two line items. Well, I send them a bill. I'm very polite. I get paid every penny every time. And let's not question that. I get paid in less than 30 days on 95% of all of my jobs. And I don't get argued on a single line item. And my customers, fortunately, have been getting reimbursed for years based off of this principle. So I know it works. Hopefully it can get taken onto a wider level and a bigger perspective, and more people will, accept that there are other ways to do this than what they've kind of been sold. But when it comes back down to it, guys, charge this stuff. Put your overhead in, put your profit. But if you're trying to get through this process and not have to argue, get your checks faster, not red flag your own account when you send a bill in to an insurance company or to an adjuster or anything like that to get your customer reimbursed, just put it into your line items. It's not anything sketchy. It's not anything like you're hiding anything from anybody. You as a contractor are entitled to get paid for your overhead coverages as well as your profit. If you feel like you need to put it at the end of your bill, boom, go ahead. That's all you. You're entitled to it. Or take a different perspective and possibly work it into your line items. Spend the time on the business administrative side of things and make sure that your line items, every one of them, cover your overhead and profit in order for you to do business and succeed. I want to see every single person in this group. We have 2,020 or so members at this point in time. I want to see every single one of you guys succeed. I want to see everybody get the help and support that they need through the different aspects or different issues that you're facing along a day-to-day basis in our industry. I've been going about this for about 7 or 8 months now. I really love to see where we're going. Hoping more videos like this we can do and more topics that I can come up with. I'm hoping this video was helpful to anybody out there who is billing or having issues with billing or collections in that case because of the fact that they are using line item overhead and profit at the end of their invoice. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with putting line item overhead and profit at the end of your invoice. But if you want to see if it can get done a little bit quicker, try to work those items into your price list and make sure that you're billing in accordance to make sure you're covering those things and put it through so that it's not a line item issue. Things may happen quicker. They may not. If they do, continue through with that. If they don't, then maybe stick to the old Xactimate way. But I know down here in Florida, that works a little bit better. I've seen some videos from guys out in California and other places in the United States who have these same issues. I'd love to see you guys get through them. I'm available. Private message me, or if you have my information, reach out to me by text message or phone call. Text is usually a little bit easier. But I'm here to help any way that I can, and I hope this was a different perspective that might gain traction and help to eliminate some of the items that we're fighting about. This goes into accountability, guys, and being business owners. You know, it's not about just guessing because some other guy's using that same perspective, or, you know, what's the percentage to use because that guy's doing it and he's making better profits, or they're accepting 10 and 10, or they're accepting 20-20, or they're accepting whatever the case may be. Cover your costs of your overhead, cover your costs to make your profits that you think that you need to as a business, and that's that. Look at your business for your business, only your business. Don't look at what somebody else did. You can look at what they did for maybe, you know, how they cleaned up their work and they trained you or whatnot, but nobody else's business costs are the same as yours. So without me going on and babbling, which I tend to do, I'm going to let you guys get on with your night. Please share this video with anybody that you think it might help. And I hope that it helps in a lot of ways and gets you guys paid the money that you deserve. You deserve every penny for your overhead and profit, and you need to make sure that you're billing for it however best suits your business. And with that, I'll say take care. I appreciate everybody jumping on here and watching this video. I'll talk to you all soon. Thanks.